get my tools set up here. Okay, in this session, we are going to look at how to use the bulk importer function in Hyku. So to begin with, I'll look at what it is that we're actually setting up on our local system for import. And the format that should take is a folder of the files that you want to import of whatever format. And that folder should be labeled files, no capitalization. The importer is very specific around capitalization, as we'll see in a few different areas of the system. And so the folder needs to be titled simply files, no capitalization, and it will contain the files that you want to import. And then with that, a CSV file that contains the metadata that relates to those works. And I'll go ahead and open this up just so you can see it. We're going to look at this in a little more detail in a moment. But this is the format that the CSV has, and you'll see each of the files in the folder has a corresponding entry in that field, but we'll look over those in a moment. So in order to import these, we first have to combine the files and the CSV into a single zip folder. And then that zip file is what we import into the system. And I want to demonstrate real quickly what not to do, because this is an easy oversight to make when you're saving it. I have these already grouped into a folder. So I have this folder labeled GTC_1 that contains the files and the metadata. I do not want to inadvertently take this top folder and create it as a zip, because then that will create a zip containing the folder GTC_1, which contains the files and the metadata. Instead, I want to go to their direct level, select both items, and at least on Windows, just right click, send to, and this is the default system. There are other file or other programs that you can use to create a zip folder, 7-zip, WinZip, but the default window should work fine in standard use cases to bring that into Hyku through the bulk importer. So now we have this, we can title that whatever we want. So I'll title it import this, and this title is unimportant. You can title it whatever you want, with the caveat that sometimes the importer, if you have in the same import job, if you go back and edit the import job and want to make changes to either the files or the metadata, and then you save a new zip and you title it the same thing as what you've already imported, then it will try to pull its cached version of the import job and not apply your update. So if you're working within the same import job and trying to make subsequent changes, then I recommend having a unique naming scheme. But so that's all that you're working with in your kind of local or desktop system. Where that gets applied is from your Hyku dashboard. And under repository contents, we have, here's where you do your collections, your works, and then you have importers and exporter jobs. Currently, our instance of Hyku is not set up to support exporting, but that will be near future implementation. So if you click on importers, it'll take you to this dashboard. And I want to caution that this does have information about this. So this is a job that was run previously in December of 2021. It has information related to that job. A lot of that information is not to be trusted. This system is communicating with a piece of software called Bulk Racks, and it's doing operations and then speaking back to this system. And a lot of sort of either phantom data or misleading information comes into this dashboard. And so you can see that the status says complete with failures. If you actually get into the import and look at it, there are no failures. that is incorrect. And it'll say that 968 entries failed. That is also not correct. There were no entries that are failed. So this is a place to manage your importer job, but the information that it puts up is not always reliable. But from this list, you can go in and actually look at the detailed information around this. And this should be counted on to be reliable. So unless there are errors or issues or bugs with the system, this should be counted on to be correct. So if it says status complete, that means that this work was brought in complete. This is the identifier for each work, an identifier for the collection, an entry ID within this import job, and it'll give you the status. So when you run a new import job, which we'll do here in a little bit, you'll see these will say pending while it's working, and then eventually we'll give you either complete or we'll give you an error. And then in some cases, it'll list the sort of error if it encounters an error here. But there are some cases where the error is not of a sort that can be reported by the dashboard. And so you can run into works that simply say errors, but does not tell you what happened, or can become sort of locked in a pending state. And so those are issues that can happen in when we upgrade to the next version of Hyku, which should happen within the next month or two. It should bring along a lot of general improvements to this importer dashboard. But you can see the works listed there. You can, when you import a work, associate it with either a new collection that'll be created by the importer or existing collections that you already have in the system. If you do that, then you'll have a tab here for collection entries and the same sort of reporting there. Now, before I go through an import job, I want to bring everyone's attention to the user guide. There's a section here on depositing and bulk upload. And there are multiple guides, one for just depositing works, one for how mediated deposit works, and then a general guide to importing items through the importer function, which covers a lot of what I will be talking about today. I can see several of you have this pulled up currently, and this walks through what I just described with the zip folder, what it should contain, detailed information about each of the metadata fields for the multiple work types that are in the system. So definitely want to be consulting this when you're working through importing, especially starting out. And then we also have, these are linked throughout here where they're relevant, and then also just listed on the user guide. Importer templates for what the metadata in that CSV should look like. And so this is the one for both generic work type, which I should specify. We have 4 work types working in our environment. That's a generic work, an image, and then OER and ETD. Generic work and image share identical metadata. So the fields are exactly the same. The only difference in terms of the metadata you would include in your CSV are identifying which work type it is, but otherwise they are identical. They just process differently in the system. The images use an image viewer, the IIIF viewer. Otherwise, these two function identically. OER has its own entirely custom metadata fields and therefore has its own template, and then same thing with the ETD. So this generic work type importer is the same one you would use for generic works or for images. And you identify which it is by listing which of those work types you're using in this model field. And this is another area where capitalization strictly applies. If you're using generic, it's generic work with the first letter of each word capitalized and no space in between. That would indicate the generic work type. Otherwise, image with the first letter capitalized would indicate an image work type. Now, OER, on the other hand, because it's custom, already has that sort of pre-filled out for you, which serves as a reminder that just like the other ones, the first letter of the word is capitalized, the second and third are not. So if you mislabel this as OER work type, or if you capitalize the entire word, then it will create an error when you try to run an import with it. And then the same is true with the ETD work type, capital E, lowercase td, and that's the name of the model that identifies which work type out of this list the work is being associated with. So we do have these up, just they're linked in Google Drive. Some users do kind of enter their information here and then save it after they've worked. If necessary, that's fine. Don't worry too much about making changes to it. We can always revert this back to its standard pristine form. But ideally, probably best practice is to take the template that's loaded on Google Drive and then download either as an Excel or a CSV document and then modify it locally in Excel or some other dedicated software for it. Just remember, if you try to save it as an Excel extension or any other extension besides .csv or .csv documents. So CSV comma delimited is the default. You can also, there's no harm in saving it as a CSV UTF-8 compliant. And if you do that, and if you're using any kind of Unicode within the document itself, then this will avoid an error. So there's no harm in actually saving it as a UTF compliant CSV, but the default and if you save it as a CSV out of Drive from here, download as CSV, it'll save as a CSV parentheses comma delimited. And any other file format will produce an error trying to import.
Nick, there's a question in the chat. It's actually a couple of questions. Is there a practical limit to the number of files or the size of files that can be batch uploaded? A little follow-up there. I know that I have encountered file size issues when uploading materials using the standard upload.
Yes, well, we've had file size issues that kind of emerged around late December, early January. It's unclear what that was related to. There should not be, there is a practical and actual file size limit. We've contacted the developer to get into the code and tell us what that is. And so we're waiting on that information. My understanding is that it's quite large. So multiple gigs. And so the issues that we have been encountering with that were bug / Solr indexing database related. That should not be an issue in general. And I don't think is an issue at all with bulk importing multiple files where each file is under that limit. Even if the cumulative is over that limit, that should process fine. That said, the larger your import, the more it has to kind of process, and the harder it is to identify an error when it comes in. And so for practical reasons, I typically break my imports up to around 100 works per job. And so if I have a collection of a few thousand works, maybe I'll work with it all in a central spreadsheet, but then when I go to import it, I'll break that into a part 1, part 2, part 3, and run each one separately. Because you just minimize the chances of running into some difficult to identify error or processing. You cut down on your pending time and so on. So that's my practical recommendation.
Then another question, can metadata only records be bulk uploaded?
Technically, so the answer is no. Hyku at this point does not formally support metadata only records. If you go into Basecamp in the documents and files folder, there's a subfolder called for use in Hyku. And actually the only item it has at the moment is a placeholder PDF. And that PDF it has the Hyku Commons logo, and then it has a bit of text that says, for access to this item, follow the URL listed in the metadata. So items referenced in this repository content can be found by following the link on the descriptive page, is what it says. So that's for a use case where you're linking to a record that's something like an interactive website or something else that you otherwise can't upload. But that's our sort of workaround. Hyku does allow, after you've initially uploaded a work, you can then go in and delete the file and the metadata record remains. So that's a kind of workaround at the moment. But if you do not include a file at all with the import, then it will not import because it's looking for that file in the item column.
So you could technically bulk import metadata only records if you had several copies of whatever placeholder you're using. Is that correct?
In fact, yeah, I'm glad you asked that, because you do not actually need to have multiple copies. If you have a CSV, and if hypothetically I listed this one.pdf in every field down to 112, then it would associate that same PDF with each of those works. And so you can use the placeholder PDF or any placeholder that you create in the same way. So you would only need to have that one item and just have it listed with each work. It'll associate that same file, whatever it is, with each work. And so then you would have a folder with literally only one item in it. So I'll walk briefly through the fields that comprise the CSV file. These first four in the template, we have you'll see a different background color for the column title. And that identifies these four fields as, I call them administrative fields, because they're not actually corresponding to a field of metadata in the work. These are administratively telling the importer how to process this work. So the item column identifies which file should be associated with this work. For all fields, you can associate multiple files. Well, for all fields, you can have multiple entries, and they have to be separated by the pipe figure, which is the tall vertical one. It's if you use shift and right slash, then that's where it is on a typical keyboard. But it's the slightly tall vertical line. And so you would separate, for instance, one PDF, 2.pdf without a space. If you have a leading space in any of these fields, that space will be treated as a character and will be brought into that field. So if you have a space before your creator's name, then that's going to add a bit of white space before their name in the metadata field, and so on. And that includes after a pipe figure. So if you separate items with the pipe, then you do not want to have a leading space following the separation. But so the item column tells the system which file or files to associate with this work. The source identifier is an identifier. It is visible in the record, but it is not the same as the identifier field where you would put, for instance, an OCLC number or a custom identifier that you use in your system. That is a metadata field that is not required, and you can use for whatever purpose. The source identifier is actually telling the importer software itself what this work is, and will allow you, it's a persistent backend identifier that will allow you to, for instance, run another import later that modifies the metadata on this same work. The source identifier does get created on any work that's brought into the system, whether it's through the bulk import or whether it's through the bulk importer or the traditional importer. It gets created upon creating a work by the system. It has to be a unique alphanumeric string. I believe it does support spaces, but it has to be a unique alphanumeric string. So you might want to name it, if you're uploading this as part of a collection, you might want to have the collection name as part of it, and then 0001, and then an ascending number, or some other system to create unique alphanumerics for that field. The model, as I said, identifies which work type it is. The collection is the only administrative field that is not a required field in the system. If you want to associate this, or if you want to add this work to a collection, you can either create a collection by putting a collection title here that does not already exist in your system. Or if you do have a collection in the system that you want to add this to, then use that name, ensuring that you have identical spelling, capitalization, etc. Any divergence from that, including if you have a following space, will create that as a new unique collection. So that's something to be careful with as you're doing it. The rest of these all correspond to the same metadata fields that this work type has in the traditional upload work dashboard. And you'll see for that reason, these first 5, at least in this view, it may not persist depending on your settings if you download it to a CSV. These are in bold because these are the required fields in this metadata type. And 2 of these have drop-down menus. And so we have these supplied as vocabulary terms for your write statement. You don't simply write in copyright or whatever you want it to ultimately say. It's a URI that links to writestatement.org. And then same thing with the resource type. This comes from a pre-generated list. And then the rest of these are optional metadata fields that you can fill in. And yeah, as I said, that corresponds precisely to these fields here. And I'm looking at this and I realize resource type is in bold here, but is not actually a required field. So that's unnecessary. So that's those fields. And then the same thing is true working in the OER or ETD work type, the fields. You have the same 4 administrative fields, and then your required fields, and then the optional metadata fields. And those will support free text, with the exception of the ones that have drop downs and require a specific URI. Those support free text, spaces or anything is just fine. So those are the templates. As I say, I recommend downloading and working with those in your own system. And then when the metadata and the files match to your satisfaction, then combine them into a zip file and upload them from the importer screen. So I'll walk briefly through what the importer screen for a new import job looks like. When you're at the importer, here's your dashboard, the list of previously run jobs. Those jobs can be modified with this pencil that'll take you to edit that job, and then you can delete old ones if you don't want them listed in this dashboard. But at the top right, there's a button to create a new importer, which is what I can constantly call an import job, but they refer to it as an importer because you're creating a batch or a job to facilitate importing this zip file with the files and the metadata. So name does not need to be unique. It's just a placeholder for what you want to know it as. I always name these simply after the date and then an alphanumeric. And that's how that's what makes sense to me to keep them straight. A lot of people use collection names or kind of descriptive names for what they're trying to do. Whatever works best for your workflow. It doesn't, the system doesn't care what you use. You have to identify an administrative set. If you only have default, it's the only one that will populate. Frequency, you'll want to choose once because we're just running these as single jobs to import multiple works. Limit, in theory, if you want to break up, I don't recommend using it. In theory, you can use this to import only the first X number of files or works within as identified by the metadata. I recommend leaving it blank and instead breaking up the metadata by creating smaller spreadsheets. And then you have to choose a parser. The only ones that we use in our workflow for Hyku Commons are these 3 CSV. The standard one, CSV, is if you're importing a generic work or an image. Otherwise, and then it's looking for those specific metadata fields that are associated with this generic work importer. Otherwise, there's a specific one for the OER work type and a specific one for the ETD work type. And so it's important that you choose the correct one there, which will match the template that you use to create the CSV. You can set the visibility for the work that you're bringing in. You can also you can assign a write statement. So in theory, you do not have to use the write statement field in the metadata in the CSV, and instead you can assign it here. You also have the option to allow this statement to override the statement that's in your metadata. If checked, then it will always use the selected write statement. If not, then, and again, this is entirely optional. You don't have to use the write statement at all, but you can, if you want, assign a general level. And if you do not select override, then any work in your import that does not have a defined copyright URI in the metadata, they will supply this instead. If you do select override, then it will apply this even if the metadata has a URI that is different than the one selected here. So that's optional, but that's something you can use. And then finally, you have to select your file. We as end users will always want to use upload a file, and then we will select it from our desktop here. So I left myself a little note to import this. So this is the zip file that I will import. And then we have these options. I can either cancel out of the job entirely. I can create this as an importer, but it will not actually look at the metadata or bring in the work until I select to do that additionally. I can create and validate simultaneously. So in theory, that looks for errors in your metadata and will tell you things that you need to correct before you attempt to import. It suffers from the same possible imperfections that the dashboard generally has, that there are some things where the bulk rack software, it doesn't throw an identifiable error. And so it won't always catch those things, even invalidate. Or you can simply create an import. So I'll go ahead and do these kind of step by step. And so I'm choosing to create this as an import job. You'll see it's working there. It'll take a minute to process the zip file and get this all associated. But simply creating it as a job, or in the language they use as an importer, will not actually bring any of the works into the system. I have to admit that in my own workflow, I never do this step by step. I always go to straight to create an import. And then if there are issues, I kind of try to solve them on a case by case. And now's probably a good time. If anyone does have questions, I can answer those while this system is working.
There's another question in the chat. Is the specify a path on the server import option functional?
It is functional. Well, it's not something that we really have access to on the user end, because what that'll do, here, if I go here, if I go to edit this work, then this is one where previously I had uploaded it from a local system. And now that zip file is in the bulk-rack server, or the server that bulk-rack communicates with. So that file is available, but if I wanted to use a different one, I don't have access to the server that this is drawing from. I can only add things to that server by selecting to upload a file, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So this is actually a fine example of, this is a importer that has been run previously. So you can see the path on the server where the previous zip, finally created it. So this is a pending, this is in pending because I only created it. I did not run it. So now I would have to open this and edit it. So in a sense, it's a way of saving your work. And now I could make changes to the settings if I wanted to, and update, or I can update and import, which I will do. So now this is pending and it's actually kind of running in the background right now. So this is what it looks like. It'll probably take a minute before we start to see activity here. But yeah, now you can see a collection has been created. Here, this identifier is a link to the information about this work. This is the metadata that came in from the CSV. And because this is working, it's just at a pending state. But as we go, we're starting to see a failure with errors. I did not actually validate any of the information on this before we're running it, because this is just for demo purposes. You can see it did create this collection. So if I go to collections, this collection's been created, and you can see it's starting to work on pulling these works in because I ran the importer. So that's the general information. It's continuing to run, pulling works in, creating failures on some other works. But so that's the basic process of going from, you have files, you can access and download this template to your local system, enter metadata that corresponds to the items that you want to pull in, combine the files and the metadata into a zip folder, look at your importer dashboard, create a new importer, and pull in that zip file. And then if you do run into failed entries, then you can kind of diagnose those on a case-by-case basis, see what caused this. This one, it seems to be, this is a, and I'm hoping that when we upgrade to the next version, this is fixed. This is an issue that we do run into with the current version of bulk racks. I would say one, but sometimes somewhere between 1 and 100, 1 and 200 files. It thinks that there is a file with that name already, and it's not true. And so what I typically do is I just collect these as I'm running import jobs, and then I create a new import that's just these works. I don't even change the metadata. I just take it out of this spreadsheet, identify the ones where there was an issue, put them together with their files, and I run a last kind of cleanup import job after I've done, the multiple parts of a collection. And that evades the issue because there's not actually a problem. It just, the system thinks that there's a problem. That is little hacky workaround that I use sometimes. But as I said, that's not intended behavior. And I'm hoping that when we upgrade to the next version of Hyku, that it communicates with bulk racks a bit more efficiently. But so that's an overview of importing. If anyone has more questions, I'll answer. Otherwise, we can move on to how to migrate out of Content DM and into Hyku.
Nick, I have one question while other folks are thinking. If you don't use the template that you've provided that gives the list of pre-approved terms for fields that have a controlled vocabulary, if you're using your own template, for example, will this system allow you to upload a non-conforming term?
Yes.
It will.
It will allow you to import a non-conforming term. It will not create an error as it does so. Where that becomes an issue for the user is potentially if once you've done that, if you then go to the work and go to manually edit it, then you've pulled up this editing page.
Mhm.
It will not allow you to then save it with the non-compliant term in there. That includes if it's a right statement. I know we've had a lot of users who have put in like full sentences in their right statement, says, you know, who to contact for permission to use and so forth. If you've done that, then then opening it to edit, you will have to override that with something from this dropdown.
Okay, so you can do that, but it's not advisable.
Yes, it'll have implications for your workflow someday down the road, probably.
Anyone else have any questions before we move on?